everybody, and welcome to this special episode of the Bodacity Show. Glad to see you all here. And I know some of you might have to go right at the top of the hour, so we might have a little bit less time, but we will rock and roll. So we're talking about 60 Shades of Grey, hashtag not done by a long shot. And I have gathered a collection of bodacious women for you who are up to some really interesting things in the world. And we want to talk about what is it like to be what I call a maturepreneur, or a part of the wisdom workforce, or basically just a badass woman who's a little older than some of y'all. I think that this is a really important topic because, I just sent out an email saying, when you buy a yellow Volkswagen, all you see is yellow Volkswagens. Well, the older I get, the more I see more really interesting women doing interesting things after 55, 65, 75, 85 and beyond, that they're starting new businesses, social enterprises, philanthropic, thought leadership, all sorts of contribution that is not being acknowledged. It is not being supported in the ways that I think it could, and that there really is an issue with ageism. It's alive and well. You add in, the challenges that women have in general, and add a little, color in the hair, and oh my goodness, we have some real specific challenges. So today I want to talk about what are some of those challenges? What is the reality of being a maturepreneur? What are some of the upsides? What are some of the downsides? And what advice do you have for people who are thinking of shifting and changing, or going after a long-awaited dream? Because one of the things that happens nowadays is women are finally coming in forward and saying, my turn to put myself at the front end of the list or the top of the list and have the life that I've wanted for a long time, which we all roundly applaud. So in case you don't know who I am, I'm Jeanette Anderson, the founder of Bodacity, and I have with me some fabulous women. I'm going to let them introduce themselves briefly rather than read you all their bios, but their bios are in the Facebook page under the meme, so you can go and find out more about them and their background. But in the meantime, let me just have you guys introduce yourself. Tell us your name, what you do in the world, who do you serve, why is that exciting to you, why does that matter to you, and anything else you'd like us to know about you. So just very briefly, Karen, why don't you start?
Hi there. My name's Karen Gedney. I'm 65 years old. I'm a retired prison doctor. And when I retired 5 years ago, I ended up having a foot in two worlds. One is I became an activist, an author, a speaker, consultant in holistic prison reform. And I also, because I am an MD, I ended up getting a whole nother degree besides internal medicine in anti-aging and regenerative medicine, because I am very worried about the demographics in the United States, and I want everyone over that 65 arena to stay vital and relevant and contribute instead of retreat.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. And yeah, we definitely want to talk to you and Marilyn about how do we stay vital, healthy, and energetic to do the work we want to do. All right, Marilyn.
Hi, I am Marilyn Vroman Robertson, and I am 61 glorious years young. My company is MBR Fitness, and I help clients 55 plus turn back the hands of time through fitness. My clients are across Canada and the US. As a young girl, I watched a number of my family members suffer from some pretty serious illnesses, and at no time was fitness ever recommended as part of their recovery. And when I had a concussion that changed my life forever, I was determined that fitness was going to be a big part of that recovery. And when I was well enough, I was determined I was going to pass that on to others. And I want them to feel that vivaciousness of life, and because there's so much living to be done. Anyway.
Beautiful. Love that. Awesome. Thank you, Norma.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate being here with you. I'm Norma Hollis, and I'm happy to say I am 73 years old, young, 73 years young, if you will, and getting younger by the year. Yes, indeed. And my work is all about authenticity. I've spent my life understanding what it means to be be authentic, studied human nature from personal, professional, and spiritual perspectives for over 30 years. And I had a system, I write programs for human development, and my most popular program is my Authenticize program, which helps people understand themselves. You know, life does not have a structured way to teach us self-awareness. We learn from the bullies in the schoolyards when we're kids, and then we spend the rest of our lives figuring out that's not who we really are. Well, I help people learn who they are in deeper ways, and I help them return to the gifts and talents they were born with. So many people go into life doing what they think is going to make them money, but not what's going to make them contentment, which is why 4.5 million people are leaving work jobs every month, at least in America. So that's what I do, help people to exercise their authenticity and live a more authentic life.
Oh, beautiful. Love it. Love it. Thank you. And Elaine.
Oh, thanks. I'm so happy to be here. I am a midlife troublemaker, life coach, author, speaker, and I am about to reach level 66. I love to do that, right? I'm not getting older. I'm just reaching bigger and better levels. So the work I do really is all around overcoming people-pleasing, perfectionism, really stepping into the fullness of who you are here to be. And that has really been my journey. I'm doing the work that I've done for myself, really having had a challenging childhood in many ways, and actually not really coming to terms with that, the trauma and the shame, until my 50s and later. And I love what Norma said about really stepping into your authenticity and who are you? And I think we spend so much of our lives conditioned to follow culture. And we often have had our true nature trained out of us at a very early age. And I think for many of us, at least for me, when I reached that late 40s, 50 mark, I could feel that in my body. I knew there was something more, something different. And it's about trusting yourself to follow that. And that's really where I help women open up to that trust, to that self-trust, to that inner knowing, instead of all of those voices out there, all those shoulds and have tos, and really come into their own. And I think at this point in time, it's time, right? I've waited long enough. It's really time.
I love that. I'm really hoping that this is broadcasting with all of you on there, because I only see me, but that's maybe it is. If not, I will post the Zoom again later. What I would love to know from each of you is, how did you, well, actually before that, let me give you a quick intro to me. I'm 62. I have been supporting entrepreneurs in growing themselves and their businesses for over 35, almost 40 years now, and also facilitating personal development and teaching coaches how to be coaches. So my specialty is getting the 4 inches between your ears working so the business can work. And really, my why is very simple. Many of you have heard this before. It's that I never want to see the look of shame and anger and frustration on another woman's face that I saw on my mom's face when I was very young and asked her for a book, and she said, "We can't afford it." It was a litany and a refrain that was often in our household and in our lives. And the inability to say yes to life is just a constraint that I just can't support. So I really want to make sure that women have the option to profit from their expertise, from who they are being in the world, from sharing their gifts, and have the option to say yes to themselves, to life, to other people, and to who they want to be, and to the difference that they can make. So that's what I do and why I do it, through training and coaching, etc., and through bringing fabulous people to you to support you in your journey. So let's talk about get your work. Most of you have been doing this work for a while. Some of you are a bit newer to it. What was the thing that made you transition into the work you're doing now? So because many of you kind of came into this iteration of your work later in life. So what is the thing that had you transition into this next stage for you? Whoever wants to go first, just jump in.
I'll take that. Yeah, I'm sort of reliving the moment as you're asking me the question, Jeanette. And it's not just one moment in time, although it is. It's a lot of little moments that add up to that point. I worked in a corporate role for about 25 years before doing this. And the more I worked with coaches, the more I started to expand my own self-awareness and self-knowingness, and realized that what I was doing in corporate no longer fit with who I was or who I am becoming, with really my values, my core values. And that was sort of my wake-up call. And there were a lot of things that happened in that period of time in corporate, promotions that didn't come through, and reorganizations, and getting sort of thrown around all over the place, that really put me in a position of saying, wait a minute, what am I doing here? So that was really the impetus for getting out of that, getting off the ladder, as I say. I was on the wrong ladder. And I truly loved coaching and mentoring people in the workplace. And I wanted to do more of that outside of that system, and mostly women. I was always really blown away by how little self-confidence many of the women I worked with had, especially those sort of middle management people that kind of get wedged in there. And
Yeah, I hear you. How about the rest of you? What was your transition or call to this work?
I'll go.
Yep.
So prior to my fall, I had a corporate role, and I've been in that role for a long time, but I don't know, 25 years or so. And I'd been a power lifter. And so I was in the gym every day. And it was all those, when you're a power lifter, it's all those tiny, tiny changes that allow you to lift more over a period of time. The changes are small. And so when I got hurt, I applied that same, those same lessons to my recovery. And it became very evident that I was unable to return to the stressful corporate life. And I thought, when I was well enough, I can take this same theory that I'm using to recover and to be able to, do fun things like walk and ride a bicycle and all those great things, to the life of all these people who need it. Right? The people who can't walk around the block, or want to climb mountains, or play with their grandchildren. And so it was, for me, there was a moment. And when I was not done yet, not by a long shot, Jeanette. Yeah. And it was just this determination. I still had so much power left, and I was going to share that. And it's kind of a roundabout story, but it was immediate, right? Just because I was injured didn't mean I wasn't going forward. And now my clients follow along.
Yes, that's true. All right, awesome. How about the other two?
I'll go next. I think for me, I did 30 years as a prison doctor. And when you leave a career like that, you have to decide, okay, what's next? And I knew that I had watched people leave significant professional careers and be totally lost. And I always felt that you have to understand, one, what kind of wisdom or knowledge you can bring in the world, and what would, let's say, serve your spirit. And I realized that, one, there had never been any real voice in the prison world from the medical side. There had never been a book written by a female prison doctor. And I really wanted to show the outside world, the prison, through the eyes of a healer instead of someone who wanted to shame and punish. And I felt that because of my unique background, I could make a very big difference in the world if I could get my message out. So I really enjoyed the book, the speaking, the consulting, but I was still a doctor. I was still a healer. And I still was looking at older people just falling apart. And I wanted to also, I've always been a fitness sort of person my entire life. And at 62, I won a Ultra Masters in bikini in one of those competitions.
Awesome.
And I did it because one of my 77-year-old friends won it in the Super Ultra Masters competition. But the whole thing was I wanted to also be an inspiration for people to stay vital and healthy and use their knowledge base to make an impact on the world.
I love that. That's very inspiring. So not anywhere on my radar, but I am so glad you did that. Okay. Norma, how about for you?
Yeah, well, mine wasn't so much a transformation as it was, I always felt like I was co-creating with the universe, that the universe can kind of set me up for certain things. For example, when I was 8, I had a tremendous challenge with my ear from earaches. I ended up taking antibiotics for 40 years, and that put me on one path. And it also taught me how to listen more carefully. So my whole life was kind of an evolution that kept unfolding, one thing building on the other. And my job was to understand what was unfolding and what to do with it. So by the time I was 28, I realized I'd done everything my parents had said to do, and I was miserable. Had all the things that are supposed to make you happy, and they weren't making me happy, which is when I started my journey and quest to understand who am I, which taught me my authenticity system and what have you. So it was kind of a co-creation. It was a long-term co-creation because it was co-creation and not just intellectually decided, if you will. I had to figure out, so where we're going with this. And it took a lot of years, a lot of years. It was divided by 30 years of research, 12 years to figuring out what it was, and 3 years to say, well, what do I do with it? Which pretty much gets me to where I am now. So I'm really just at the point in my whole career of taking all the wisdom and all the things that I've learned and turning it into viable products. I've had quasi products, and now I kind of know what I'm doing. And I was kind of just following the universe and co-creation and figuring out and listening. But I'm very clear now on what it is and the process, which is one of the reasons why I tell younger people to just trust the process. Trust the process, even when it makes no sense. It makes sense eventually. Just stick with it. So, yeah, that's been my journey.
And it does sometimes take us time to kind of, well, to learn and to settle into who we are and who we want to be and what is our uniqueness, and bring all of that forward and to get the experience, to be able to share the experience. One of the things that I think is a tremendous disservice to the world is the bias against or ageism. Just when people get smart, no one listens to them. It's just the stupidest thing in the world. So yeah, frankly, pisses me off to no end. Okay, so and I was likely very guilty of that when I was younger as well, right? Because we get wise a little late in life at times. So what I'd love to know more, Norma, for you is you've been in the game quite a long time. How are you staying sustainable in this process that you've been in for a long time and for so long into your retirement? How are you staying sustainable?
Well, first of all, to me, there's no such thing as retirement. You do what you love. You're just living. That's your life. So this is my life. It's who I am. It's what I've been, and that's what sustains me. The eyes of people who know themselves in a different way, how they open up when they come to my class, kind of like this, and they leave like this, and they have so much confidence and clarity, and they tell me over and over again when people say, I've been watching you for 10 years. To people I talked to last week, it was just like, oh, I was scared to talk to you. You're Norma Hollis. It's like, I'm just Norma. So, I mean, those things, sometimes you don't know the impact you're making. And I was the first Black woman to own a speaker bureau for Black speakers. And I'm halfway a legend in the Black community among speakers. And I didn't know that. People had to tell me that many times. And I'm just being me. I'm just allowing the universe to come through me to share with people what I feel, what we feel together is going to make a difference for them. And I try to do it in a way that's authentic, in a way that's going to touch people and help them to move forward. And I don't do it with any expectation that it's going to have any massive impact. And I'm always thrilled, when it does. So that's what keeps me going. Just the fact that it's what I believe, what I know I'm here to do. And why wouldn't I do it? So, and why wouldn't that turn me on? Which it does. So it's just being my authentic self is what keeps me going.
I love that. Okay, so and I for some reason it's only showing me in the Facebook group. I have no idea why. So I will post the video of all your beautiful smiley faces later, but they can hear you. So just so you know. All right. So anybody else want to make a comment about how to stay sustainable? And maybe Karen, you might want to talk about that from a health perspective, and Marilyn from a movement physical perspective. How do we stay vital and healthy? And we all know the basics: eat well, exercise more, etc. But what are the things that you see that people really aren't doing that would truly support them in staying healthy and vital?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. For when I give my talks, one of the talks I give is called Renew, Rewire, and Refire. And the biggest thing is their mindset has to change first. They have to believe that they are still vital and relevant, and not agonize when they look in the mirror or they conceptualize that they're going to get decrepit and that sort of thing. And to really point out to them that cultures that value the elderly, like the Japanese, they actually honor and celebrate people who are like approaching 100. And the United States is a youth culture. But for me, I feel that the baby boomers, who many of us are in this group, that we really changed a lot when we were young in terms of culture. And I think it's our time to change the culture of how we look at age, that we're not going to go silently into the dark with decrepitude. And that's why one of those things I want to inspire people. But it's the biggest thing is mindset. People know that what they eat, how they exercise, how they meditate, they know the basics. They don't make them habits. So I always try to encourage people to do one thing at a time and really create that habit and then rewire it in their brain so it becomes automatic, and then they approach the next one.
I love that. That's very practical. All right, Marilyn, how about you?
I think I have a lot of the same comments that Karen does. Mindset is first and foremost. Social media and the media in general tells us that only if you weigh 105 pounds and have your golden locks are you worthy as a woman, and that is anything but true. I like to tell clients, a lot of women still have, the bat wings, right? And I say, those arms have hugged and supported and loved. And as you work on those, honor them, send them love. Think about, it's all about a mindset first and foremost. And then there are, they often tell people who are a little older, just go for a walk. Well, just going for a walk isn't enough. We really need to be lifting some weights, and we have imbalances. And so we need to address those imbalances. And as well, eat well. So many of my clients tell me I eat, 1,200 calories a day. Well, you should be eating 2,000 calories a day of good food. It's all a mindset, and it's about putting social media and media aside and listening and reading good science and being in touch with people who can support that, who can support you in your process. I have to share just a tiny little story. I had this gentleman who I was working with for about a year, and he called me one day, goes, I got to show you something. He goes, watch me jump out of my chair. And I think that's what the general population needs, is to be able to be vibrant and to get their youth back as it is today.
exactly. And it's you know, the brain getting foggy and fuzzy and so forth is a function of health and wellness and vitality and mindset as much as it is an age thing. I know women who can run circles around 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and many of you, for example, and to be the difference that we want to be, we have to have energy. We have to have focus, and we have to have our acuity, our brain. So it's really important to take care of that foundation. And part of this transition is really stepping into how do we want to live? Like, how do we want to structure our life? What is the lifestyle we want now? So Elaine, you just recently made some big changes in your life as far as lifestyle. So tell us a little bit about that. What prompted it, what allowed it, and how has it been so far?
You know, what prompted it, before I tell you what it is, what prompted it, I think, is really learning to trust myself and giving myself permission to do those things that I feel called to do. I've really learned to practice setting, as Marilyn said, the media and social media aside. Mindset really is how we think about ourselves, really is the foundation of everything. And I was thinking about when you started off with the idea of ageism. Ageism is us if we buy into it. Right? And so what we're doing right now is changing that just in this conversation. We're putting that energy into the world. We're putting those ideas into the world. And I'm really grateful to be part of that. So I recently sold a home that I lived in for 10 years and everything I own and my car, and I bought an RV. And I am living a nomadic lifestyle, I would say 60% of the time, probably. I'm at my son's house right now as we're recording this, which is where I am when I come home to Rhode Island. It has been, oh my gosh, I'm not even sure I had the words. Letting go of almost everything I own has put absolutely nothing to distract me, from figuring out me, from really being with myself and listening and learning. There's been some frustration. There's been some really amazing things that I'm doing and that I've done. I'm early into it, like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something. And I'm getting ready to leave again in a couple of weeks for travels in October. I realize as I'm going through this process that part of my childhood and a lot of the things I'm sort of working through, old trauma, has really put me in a container. So I've been living in this container, and slowly that I break out of that container and I bump up against other edges. And this is really, for me, life uncontained in a way that I've never lived it before. I've not done it without being afraid. I don't mean afraid to be out in the world. I just mean, you know, gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. It's sort of in flux all the time, and that's different for me. And just trusting that I know what to do, or trusting that I will figure it out, and trusting the process has been a really big part of what I'm doing right now.
And it's a big transition, and especially the letting go of everything. I also went mobile, but I did mine. I sold my house and everything I own in 2016, and am doing a different version than you. I'm doing, you know, house and pet sitting and traveling all over the place, including foreign countries. And as long as they have good internet, I'm good to go. There's lots of pros, lots of cons, but one of the biggest things that is kind of a challenge around making that different lifestyle, whatever it may be, an alternative lifestyle, is giving yourself permission to do that and really figuring out, what do I want? You know, some people want their home, their nest, some people want freedom, some people. So how did you really give yourself that permission to make that big leap?
Oh, you know, I spent some time on the road doing some long road trips a few years ago, which kind of got me going on the bug. And I really think it's just being in that place of listening to yourself. You're right. Permission is a huge thing because I'm not just stepping out on my own, but my family's involved, my partner's involved. There are other people that this affects. I have a mom who's 92 with dementia, so I'm not here a lot for her. I'm relying on the rest of my family to manage her care. And that's scary, especially for women. For me personally, I have been very much someone who's been a people pleaser and afraid to, sort of rock the boat. So it takes courage, I think, to do this. What I'm finding though is that all of the fear was mine and nobody else's. It's really just what I thought would happen. And I think the interesting thing for me is I'm just figuring it out all the time. So I think as you said, some people want to be in their nest, and that's wonderful. And I did for a long time until I didn't. And so for me, it's being in this place of the unknown and letting myself have that adventure, finding out what I'm capable of, what adventures I can have, what experiences I can have out in the world that I've never given myself permission for up until now.
Yep. And I think there's an element too of really getting our core competence, because many of us think we are our situation, our circumstance. That's where our confidence comes from, is areas where we feel competent and familiar and in our comfort zone. And really understanding that we're competent even if we're not in our comfort zone, that we have that core ability to be resourceful, to be adaptive, to be able to change, no matter what age and stage of life, when we really just trust ourselves. And that makes the leaps easier. How about for the rest of you? And for me, by the way, the tipping point was I came home from a trip. I had been doing lots of traveling and had tried various different iterations of renting my house out, having roommates, et cetera, et cetera. And there was two things. One, I came home once and thought about selling the house and looked at my big, beautiful plants. I had big trees in my house and I burst into tears and I was like, I put my plants, my beautiful plants. It was my, grieving over my stuff. And then I kind of burst out laughing and thought, really? You can't have your ideal life because of a ficus? Really? That's what's going to hold you back? And I was like, well, when you put it that way, it seems a little silly. And so I realized that my stuff owned me. I didn't own my stuff. And that was just like, no, that's not okay. And then the final tipping point was I came back from a long trip to a house full of damage done by roommates that I had really supported and loved. And it's like, okay, that's it. Too much stress to try and be in two places at once. So let me just let it go. And the culling down process, the letting go process was super challenging, super liberating. I have a 5x10 storage unit now that everything I own fits in, and it still feels too much. It still feels cumbersome. So
I don't even have a storage unit. I have 3 boxes in my son's garage and everything else is either right here with me, but it'll go back in the RV when I travel.
That's amazing.
It is a process. I think I started shedding things, easily a year or more before I actually made the decision. I worked into it.
And I think one of the things we shed as we get older is, like you said, approval. Other people's opinions don't matter quite as much. And we let go of our notion of who we have been so that we can become who we want to be. So how about for the rest of you? How do you muster up the courage to do what you're doing, to be the difference that you're being? What's your way of creating more courage to make the leaps that you've made? So Karen, how did you leave that kind of secure profession, lots of, being venerated and lots of renown within your field, to go out on your own and to do what you're doing?
Well, it was a combination of things. First was when you do 30 years as a state employee, you have that ability to think, well, do I continue working or do I go and take a state retirement? At that moment, the administration had swung to the dark side, I mean, exceptionally. And then I had to make the decision, okay, do I keep battling it or do I pivot and battle it from a different direction? And I made the decision to leave and then battle it from the outside, which is why I wrote my book, 30 Years Behind Bars, Trials of a Prison Doctor. And then I turned to activism, and I belong to many organizations now locally. One was the Ridge House to help ex-felons with residential housing and medical psych services. I sit on an organization to try to bring more college education into the prison because Pell Grants are coming back. I am involved with Return Strong, which is an organization of the incarcerated families who are trying to get services and help for the inmate population. And then on top of it, I had to also pivot because my husband of 33 years died. And then I had to, let's say, reboot. And, you know, when you talk about decluttering, my husband was a clutter mouse. That's what I will say, right? I mean, really. And when he died, it was an incredible shock to me. And I spent 48 hours without eating or sleeping, taking every single thing of his out of the house and putting it in the garage to bring to the garbage dump, everything. And, you know, to organizations to give away clothes and all that stuff. I had it all divvied up, but that was 48 hours of just across the board. And then I had a house that was sort of falling apart a bit. And I had the decision, well, what do I do? And I realized it was big enough that to be by myself. So I invited one of my ex-felons who needed a place to stay to become my housemate. And that has been now for the last 3 years and has been exceptionally good for him and me because it works well for us. He fixes everything, works full time. I travel a lot and I still have a home base and I know I'm helping someone significantly. So
That's beautiful. And condolences on your loss. That's a long time to be with someone and then have that big gap. What I've heard is that a lot of you changed because of a values mismatch, that the direction you were going in no longer fit, a healing crisis, some people call it, opportunity, others call it, so some kind of health challenge, or a big shakeup in your life, like a death or a something that's happened that kind of triggers the change. And for others, it really sounds like it's the little incremental things, like the grain of sand and the grain of sand until it finally tips. So any other advice about how to create the courage to make the leap when it finally does tip, whether it's by a big change or subtle little choices along the way?
You know, my values crisis was a values with society more than anything else. And I learned that very early in life because the routineness of regular jobs just was abhorrent to me. There's no way I could be routine. That's just not me. And between that and the problems I had with my ear and antibiotics and, you know, et cetera, I had to learn very early to pivot outside of the norm. And so my life was not routine at all. By the time I was, I don't know, 45 or so, I was pretty much figuring out how I can do this on my own without being beholden to any organization or anything else. And, you know, when I had my bureau, I met so many people who came to me and said, you know, I've been working for wherever for 10 or 20 or 30 years, and I've lost myself. And I don't know who I am anymore. And can you help me find myself again? And when I was much younger, I used to wonder, I used to direct Head Start programs in my first career. My family and child development was my area. And I used to wonder, why is it that all these directors and friends of my parents even, they work and they retire at 60 and they're dead at 65. And that didn't make sense to me. And I knew I did not want that kind of life. I didn't know why, I didn't know how to do otherwise. But again, in cooperation with the universe, we just carved our way through. And I also had a lot of my decision making was because of health issues. I have had 13 surgeries in my lifetime for nothing life threatening, but always something that needed fixing, like 3 surgeries on the hole in my eardrum, until it finally healed 20, 30, 40 years later. But so a lot of my, you do those timeline things, and my timeline was based on the surgeries that I had. It's like, well, hold up, that's not the way to look at your life, Norma. So those kind of things, mindset again, once I realized what I was doing and saw myself a little differently, I was able to make the adjustments. And, that's kind of what has, and then the values conflict I've always had with what society tells you and how they strip you of your authenticity at such a young age. So it's always been a constant, how do I help people? How do I maintain my own? How do I find it? How do I maintain it? How do I live it? How do I share it? And just how I help other people do that. So it's just been a driving thing for me. And I help other people recognize their values, because that to me is what's really lacking on society, is shared values.
Well, speaking of understanding their value, very quickly, because our time's almost up already, but very quickly, what have been some of the challenges that you've encountered in growing your business or building your business at this stage? And what advice would you give to people about that, or how to overcome that, or deal with that, or think about it if you've got any? So anybody who'd like to share on that, what have been some of the challenges in growing your business and or you're selling your books, et cetera, and what advice would you give to people about that?
Well, I can throw out that if you are an author, and as I am, I think one of my challenges was I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to really get it out of there at all. And what I also realized by my little stops and starts is that I sort of like this, maybe it's a different philosophy, but I like the thought of raving fans in terms of concentrating on putting it in the hands of people who will run with it. Because I must say I am not good at social media. The prison, never wanted us on social media because of security reasons and things like that. And I think that whatever you want to push or market, you just have to find a way that makes sense to you, and you get some traction.
Okay, awesome. Yep, that's a big challenge for a lot of people.
That was, I was thinking the same thing. I think for me, marketing, or just how do I show up in a way that feels authentic and true for me. There's so much noise out there about do this, do that, be on social media, post this many times. And if it's not feeling joyful and fun for me, and it took me a while to sort of get through that and figure out what really feels good to me. And when I show up with all of me. And honestly, that's really all that I think any of us needs to do. And I think for people who are considering a shift, a change, a transition, whatever it is, whether it's personal, whether it's about a business, I think that that one thing I would say is trust what you feel, and find a coach. Work with a coach who can help you sort it out. And sometimes we know we want a change, we're just not quite sure what that is, or really where we want to be, and we often don't give ourselves permission as women to do that, to put ourselves first, to say, okay, wait, this is my time, and I'm going to spend the time to, to get clear about what it is that that I would like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hear in both of those things, get support. One is get support for the skill set you don't have, because we don't all have skills. In fact, many people come from the technician perspective. They have an ability and a skill, but they don't know how to do business. So get support for learning how to do business. And again, any age or stage doesn't matter. You got to learn how to run a business. And the second thing is get support for that internal process as well, for the courage, for the being, having someone hold your hand while you take that leap. It's far less scary if you've got someone holding your hand while you leap. So, or, over on the other side going, come here, yeah, come here. Or on the other side kicking your ass, whichever you need. There's all sorts of variations on that. All right, Marilyn, how about for you? What's been a challenge, and how have you, what advice do you have?
I think like others, the challenge is how to market your services. A lot of my clients are not on social media. And so it's more going out and finding them one-on-one, and the referral network is really beneficial in my line of work. And I work in a gym, but I work privately in people's homes and in my own studio. And so it's not like I don't have a sign, right? But I think what I would really recommend for people is get a coach. And we don't know what we don't know. Like, I had a very successful corporate career that served me well, but that does not transition into how to market my business. And if you have a great coach that I believe, come here, or push you, whatever you need, it's really great. But I would say just be brave, and you've got it. You know it.
Yes, there's a beautiful show on Netflix, if you haven't seen it, by Brene Brown, called A Call to Courage, and it's got some great tips and hints on that. And she talks about bravery is not the absence of fear; it's the willingness to do it anyways, but do it with vulnerability. Authenticity is vulnerability, right? We can't be authentic without being vulnerable. All right, Norma, how about for you? What would you advise, and what's been a big challenge for you?
Well, I certainly would advise people to be authentic, be who you are. I'm not a believer that you should be able to do everything. I believe you should know what your gaps are, where you are vulnerable, and if other people do that. When you're trying to do everything, you're going further and further away from what your gifts are and the reason you're in business in the first place. So, that would be one of the first things I say. The same challenge, creative people who have are making a difference and really want to be in that vein, authors, what have you. We are creative people, and we want to have something new and different every day. And marketing requires you got to come do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's why it's hard for us. And there are so many challenges, and it is very difficult, and it is very noisy. So I would, one thing I would say is be steadfast about really identifying who your target market is and how to find them. My biggest challenge as I've been growing, in addition to marketing, was figuring out what I'm doing, because mine wasn't, I didn't set out to say, I'm going to do this. I set out, being kind of led to do this. And I didn't know what I was being led to do. And I had finished it, and I still didn't know what it was. And so it's still, the more that I learn that it is, the bigger it becomes, and the bigger the opportunity becomes. And so there's so many aspects to it, many of them that only I could do to birth it. But now I'm at the point that I'm transitioning from the things only I could do to now meeting all these other people to do them, and finding the right people who also have the right value system is a challenge, because sometimes you learn late that the values of other people, their value is better at getting you to believe them than getting them to help you in some cases. But sometimes you don't learn that until you've already paid them. So, just being able to discern, and that comes over time and wisdom, and you're going to make mistakes in that. And then also to not beat yourself up when you do make mistakes, because anyone that's in business has made more mistakes than they care to remember, but they've learned from every one of them. Or chances are, unless they've done it over and over again, but most of us don't. We stop doing that after a while. It gets kind of hard-headed. So just, don't expect yourself to be perfect. Allow yourself to make mistakes, and give yourself a chance to learn from the mistake that you have, and stay authentic.
I love it. Thank you. All right. So how can people connect with you and find out more about you and the work that you do? So Karen, how about you? Where can people reach out to you and how can they find your book?
The best thing is to go to my website, which is discoverdrg.com.
Okay.
And there they can see the book and the reviews. They can see what I do in holistic prison reform, but there's also a contact page. So if you are interested in that or in the staying young business as well, contact me on either one.
All right. Beautiful. And Marilyn, how about you?
The best way is on my website. It is at MVR Fitness. So it's MVR Fitness YYC.com. And there you'll find a free offer on how to stick with your goals. You'll also find out how to book a free call with me. Find out how to get you started.
Beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. And that's MVR Fitness YYC is the code for Calgary, by the way.
Yes.
.com, did you say, or .ca?
.com.
.com. Okay. And Norma, how about for you? How do people find you?
I would invite you to accept one of my gifts. If you go to gifts in the plural, giftsfromnorma.com, there are several gifts there for you. One will help you understand your own natural gifts and talents. That's one of the things I teach with authenticity. Another one is there for writers and speakers who want to learn more about how authenticity relates to that. And then one of my primary work is a grid of authenticity, which I refer to as an energy grid. And that's explained on that also. So
Okay.
gifts from normal, plural, help yourself.
Awesome. Beautiful. That's a great idea. I just wrote it down as a to-do action item on my list. All
There you
right.
go.
We don't have enough to-dos as it is. All right. And how about you, Elaine?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, elaineblaze.com. And there's an option there if you'd like to sign up. I offer a free download, which is an ebook called Regret Proof Your Life. It really is about moving beyond people pleasing and into authenticity. And you can also find out on there how to book a free call with me. And if you'd like to see images as I move along through this nomadic journey, I am on Instagram at Elaine Blaze Coaching.
Awesome. I love that. And it is fun and fascinating to follow people's nomadic journey. I don't think of doing it enough nearly. And so I'm glad you're doing that. That's very smart. All right. And you can find me at bodacity.ca. That's for Canada. And or if you aren't a member of the Facebook group, the Purpose and Profit Sisterhood on Facebook, we would love to have you as a member. So please join us. And if you are a member, then jump in more, promote yourself and really put yourself out there. If you have questions from this, I again apologize for some of the technical challenges, but please post them in the Facebook group. I will put this Zoom into the Facebook group as well so that you can see the whole recording with everybody. And these wonderful experts will get back to you. What I'm really hearing though is a lot of being purpose-led, or having a real strong calling and desire to make a difference, and therefore we're not done by a long shot with that contribution. I also really see and hear in all of you what I'm going to call a being home with yourself. Like coming back home to yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages to being older in my life, is more comfortable with myself, more self-love, more at home in my skills, less approval issues, less perfectionist noise and crap. And so more willing and able to get things out there, which I think is one of the gifts of growing up in our world and in our maturity and our authenticity. What's one last piece of advice you'd like to give people when they're thinking about making their next brave leap, when they're thinking about, I'm not done? What's one last piece of advice that you have for people based on your experiences? So I'll go in reverse order this time. So Elaine.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's sort of a little mantra of advice in a sense. Listen to yourself, trust yourself, take a chance, because you can change your mind. Not permanent.
Love that. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Norma.
I'd like to share some research from the New England Journal of Health that says that the most productive decade of human life is between 60 and 70.
Hmm.
The second most productive decade is 70 to 80. And the third most productive decade is 50 to 60. And the fourth, by the way, is 80 to 90. So anyone before 50, you're just practicing. Wait up, it's going to get better as you get older. Thanks.
Awesome. I did not know that. That's great. Hey, if you're willing, will you post a link to that in the group if you have access to it? Because I think that's brilliant.
We can only find the citation, but not the article.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
Good enough. Well, even the information is good. All right, Marilyn, how about you?
A very wise woman said to me, someone is waiting to hear what you have to say. And just know that. So go ahead, because someone's waiting for you. Someone needs you.
And need your unique expertise and heart, for sure.
Mhm.
All right, Karen, how about you?
I would say to people that to stay young and vital, you have to get out of your comfort zone and you need to go forward and to always look at it as an adventure, a learning opportunity, a growth opportunity.
I love that. Having a learning mindset does keep us younger and more vital, for sure. And we're going to end this with, I have 2 rules in life because I can't remember a lot more than that. And so my 2 rules are, don't do anything you regret and don't regret anything you've done. So not in a psychopathic way, just in a learn from it and move on kind of way. But don't do anything you regret. I think life is about getting to the end without regrets, personally. That for me is my biggest goal. And so part of it is I really want to make sure I never have regrets, especially about the things not done, right? It's easy to learn from things we have done. And like, Elaine said, you can always change your mind and move on and fix what you need to and move on. It's the things that we didn't do that I think haunt us the most. So if you have a dream, if you have a desire that's niggling away in the background or right in the foreground, calling you forward, say yes. Say yes to it. Say yes to you. It's never too late. We are #not done by a long shot. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for persevering with all the wonkiness. I appreciate you and your adaptability, another one of the benefits of getting older. And thank you for listening to this show. And if you are someone who is in the wisdom workforce or will be, the world needs your wisdom. So pitter patter, let's get at her. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.